Alan, if you'd like to go ahead and share our presentation. Awesome. I hope everyone can see that. Again, thank you guys for being with us today for our Thursdays with the UDO virtual listening session series. My name is Yolanda Jones. I am the Senior Project Manager for Community Outreach with Planning. I'm also joined by members of the UDO project team as well as other staff members in this session. Today's topic will cover Neighborhood 1 zoning districts. So the virtual listening session series that we've kind of covered over the past several weeks, and we do have an additional one next week, were based or came about based on public comments and feedbacks we've received to date. These sessions are a chance for you as the community to voice your opinions about the standards within the first draft of the UDO. And they're designed really as an additional avenue to submit feedback on this first draft. The goal of these sessions is for staff to listen to your feedback, your suggestions, and your concerns. And we just really want to put emphasis on that these sessions are garnered towards listening versus responding. Questions and comments that you share during the sessions are transcribed and entered into our public comment portal for response after the close of each session. So quickly, just want to share a few guidelines, which I'll go over again in just a little bit right before our open forum. Those who signed up to speak during meeting registration will be called upon in the order for which you registered. Each speaker will have the floor for 2 minutes. You will receive a request from the meeting host to unmute yourselves when it is your turn to speak. And to maintain fairness, once your 2 minutes has expired, you will be muted so that we can move to the next person. Those who did not sign up to speak during meeting registration, but you do wish to speak during the meeting, you may type your name in the chat box and we will add that to a queue. And we will call you, time permitting, we will call you from the queue to speak. Once that queue has been cleared, attendees may request to speak again. If for some reason we do have time and I have to cut you off, like if you have more than the 2 minutes, and we do have time permitting, we will allow you to finish your thought. So we'll do that again, time permitting. We encourage you to share your opinions in an honest and civil manner. And again, the emphasis on these sessions, this whole entire series is listening to your feedback versus responding. So here you'll see a few key dates around the UDO. That first draft was released on October 7th, and we are currently in the first phase of engagement. Public comments in on March 18th. That's coming pretty quickly. So please take a moment, jot that date down. Don't forget it. It is open through March 18th for public comments. After the comment period closes, the review of those comments and preparation of the red line draft, which is going to be the next draft of the UDO, is scheduled for May. City Council will have a public hearing in June, as will Planning Committee have their recommendation. And then we have a hopeful adoption for July of 2022. So today's session will actually highlight the proposed standards for Neighborhood 1 zoning districts, translation of current residential zoning districts to Neighborhood 1 districts, alternative development options and proposed overlay districts. And then we will open the floor for our public forum. And again, I'll go over those kind of guidelines and rules when we get back to that. We will actually be receiving a quick presentation by Alan Goodwin, Senior Project Manager within the Entitlement Services Division. And then once we've closed our public or our open comment forum, we will then close out with some highlight of UDO resources and some additional engagement opportunities that will be forthcoming. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alan.
Thank you, Yolanda. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to go online and take a look, at least have a quick review of the UDO, if not have dug deeper into it. But if you have, you'll know that it is set up divided into a number of articles, and you'll find the neighborhood zoning districts in Article 4 of the UDO. So if you haven't peruse the neighborhood zoning districts yet, go online. We'll tell you how to get there toward the end of the presentation if you haven't been there already. And take a look for yourself at what these neighborhood 1 zoning districts are in more detail. We're going to just go over them at a pretty high level during this presentation because we want to save more time for your feedback. But so we won't be going too deeply into the details of these districts. But the neighborhood 1 zoning districts have been drafted to be used in the place types that are mapped as neighborhood 1 throughout our community through the policy mapping process. That's a parallel effort that's going on that is mapping the entire city of Charlotte into one of 10 different place types. And the UDO is creating zoning districts that are appropriate for use in each of those place types. And so for the neighborhood 1 place type, we have created 6 new neighborhood 1 zoning districts, and they are named. The naming convention is N1A, N1B, so forth, all the way through N1F. For the most part, the new neighborhood 1 districts are comparable to our current single family districts that you're probably familiar with, such as R3, R4, and R5. So there is a direct correlation between neighborhood 1A, for example, and the current R3, and for neighborhood 1B and 1B is very comparable to our current R4. The exception to that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it today, is the last of these, the N1F district. We don't have a current district that's comparable to that. We'll talk a little bit about that, but for the most part, we'll focus on the N1A through the N1E. So when the UDO is adopted, the existing conventional zoning districts that we have today will go away and will be replaced by new UDO zoning districts. And I say conventional zoning districts because I'm not talking now about conditional districts or optional districts, if you know what those are. We're only talking about conventional zoning districts. So for this, for our presentation today, I've highlighted just the current residential districts that will translate to one of the new UDO districts upon adoption of the UDO. So you can see in the highlighted area that the R3 district will translate to N1A, and R4 will translate to N1B, R5 to N1C, R6 to N1D, R8 also to N1B. And then our UR1, which is an urban residential district, will translate to the N1E district. You can see the rest of these districts are all of the other various conventional zoning districts that we have in Charlotte, and they will all obviously translate to one of the new UDO districts as well. But today we're just going to focus on the neighborhood 1 districts. So just a couple of highlights of the neighborhood 1 districts. In the N1A through the N1E districts, in other words, the equivalent of our current R3 through R8, the zoning will allow for single family duplexes and triplexes on all lots, as well as quadruplex dwellings if they're on an arterial street and only if an affordable housing unit is provided. The N1F, that last district, will allow all of the dwelling types that were allowed in the N1A through E as above, but will also allow for small scale townhouse and multifamily dwellings. The neighborhood 1 zoning districts will also allow for non-residential uses such as places of worship and educational facilities, schools and parks, as well as for the reuse of the existing neighborhood commercial establishments under certain conditions. And what we're talking about there is kind of the corner store kind of neighborhood commercial establishment. Some other highlights of the, again, focusing only on the N1A, B, C, D, and E. As I said, single family duplex and triplex dwellings are allowed, and that's in response to the adopted policy in the comprehensive plan that allows for those types of dwellings in these districts. quadruplex on arterials, as I mentioned in the previous slide. We are not regulating residential density the way that we do now in dwelling units per acre. So for example, in our current R3, the 3 stands for 3 residential units per acre. The R4 is 4 units per acre. We are not regulating density that way in the UDO. The minimum lot sizes will vary by each district, just as they do now, but they are the same minimum lot size for all dwelling types. So the minimum lot size will not change whether the development on the site is a single family home or a duplex or a triplex or even a quadruplex. The minimum lot sizes will be the same, as will the front, side, and rear setbacks. The maximum height for duplexes and triplexes in established neighborhoods is based on the height of nearby dwellings. We'll have a slide that talks about that a little bit later in this presentation. ADUs or accessory dwelling units are allowed on lots with single family dwellings. Only 1 driveway is allowed per street frontage on a lot in one of the N1 districts. Parking for duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes must be to the side or rear of a dwelling so that we avoid filling up the front yard with parking pads and parking lots. And we are also introducing some new overlay districts that have been designed to preserve neighborhood character, among other things. So when I said that the new neighborhood 1 districts are generally comparable to our current single family residential districts in a number of ways, I'm just showing this slide as an example, a comparison for some of the more common dimensional standards that you would find in a residential district. For example, the minimum lot area, that's the least amount of land that you can have to build a new dwelling in a lot in these districts. In our current, if you want to look at the top left column, in our current R3 zoning, the minimum lot area is 10,000 square feet, and the new N1A corresponds to that exactly, as does the N1B correspond to the lot area of the R4 and the N1C to the R5 and so forth. We do lose a little bit of that as we get down into the N1D, but for the most part, they are quite comparable to our current standards in terms of that, also in terms of our minimum lot width and our front and side and rear setbacks. There are some slight differences, but for the most part, they are quite comparable to what we have today in our single family districts. I mentioned the duplex and triplex height limit, and the thought behind this proposed regulation is that because duplexes and triplexes may tend to be larger than the houses in the surrounding neighborhood, that we wanted to regulate the sidewall height of those so that these, if they're introduced into an existing neighborhood, are more compatible with the character of the neighborhood in terms of height and massing. So we're proposing a regulation, which has been the subject of quite a bit of conversation, that would limit the sidewall height of an infill duplex or triplex to either 12 feet at the required minimum side setback, or, and this is the important or, the average height of the adjacent building sidewalls on both sides of the lot, whichever is greater. So the way that you can think about that is that if you are in a neighborhood of, say, single family ranch houses that tend to be fairly, don't tend to be very tall, and you wanted to put a duplex or a triplex on a lot in the middle of that neighborhood, your sidewall height at the side setback would probably be closer to the 12 feet. However, from that point, you can go taller as you stay within the kind of height plane that you see outlined in this diagram. However, if you're in a neighborhood that already has 2-story houses or 2.5-story or even 3-story homes, and you want to put that same duplex or triplex into that neighborhood, you would take the average of the sidewalls of the houses on either side of your lot and you could average those out, and that would be the maximum sidewall height. So it could well exceed the 12 feet that we're proposing if the houses on either side of you were taller, 2 stories, say, or 2.5 or 3 story. We also have some development options in the neighborhood 1 zoning districts. These are fairly similar to development options in our current residential districts, although we think we've made some improvements to them. The first is our conservation residential development, which is similar to what we call our cluster development now, which means that you can build more homes in a particular area if you set aside areas for common open space. It will allow you to reduce the size of the lots and thus get more homes there by preserving large amounts of open space. And then the other development option is a voluntary mixed income bonus, which is something that we have today, but it is not very often used. And we think we may have made some improvements to that mixed income bonus option to make it more attractive and hopefully make it more readily used. I mentioned also that we have new overlay districts that can be used in our N1, A, B, C, D, and E districts. The first is a neighborhood character overlay. Another is a residential infill overlay district. And the third overlay district is a cottage court overlay district. I'm not going to go into the details of these because that would take quite a bit of time. If you're interested, you can take a look in the UDO and go into those various articles, article 14.2, 14.3, and 14.4 in the overlay district section of the UDO. However, I will say that these overlay districts will generally allow you to modify some of the development standards, but they won't allow for modification of the permitted uses. So you couldn't use one of these overlay districts to, say, restrict duplexes and triplexes from being built. These are only to apply various deviations and generally development standards, height and setbacks and so forth. That concludes the brief presentation on the neighborhood zoning districts, and I'd like to kick it back to Yolanda.
Thank you, Alan. So I will quickly kind of go back over those guidelines that I shared with you earlier, just to start us off in the open forum. So each speaker has the floor for 2 minutes, and you will receive a request from the meeting host to unmute yourself when it is your turn to speak. We will call your name in the order for which you've registered, and so that we maintain fairness. Once your 2 minutes has expired, you'll be muted so that we move on to the next person. Those who did not sign up to speak during meeting registration but wish to speak, you'll just need to drop your name in the chat so that we can add you to a queue to speak. And time permitting, we will call your name to speak as well. And please note that even though you're speaking during this series, this is just an additional way to get your comments in. However, you can still enter your comments at our comment portal, which is found at charlotteudo.org. Additionally, we just want to highlight that when you put comments in our comment portal, there will be no response to potential changes within the UDO. That is literally going to be reserved for that red line draft that will come out in May. However, if you have questions of clarification that you'd like addressed, if you put those within the comment portal, we will respond to them. So we'll go ahead and get started with our open forum. And our very first speaker is Daryl Greenberg. Daryl Greenberg, are you with us today? Okay. Next up, we have Philip Gussman. Commissioner Gussman, are you with us?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. I just wanted to, I honestly inadvertently signed up to speak at every single one of these that I signed up for, but at the same time, I think it has been helpful to to just highlight to everybody that both staff and the rest of the community and the certainly our elected officials are paying attention and watching this particular issue very closely. And very much looking forward to hear additional feedback from our community about how we can protect our neighborhoods and at the same time make Charlotte a better place for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gusman. Okay. The next person on our list is John Friday. Mr. Friday, are you with us this afternoon? Okay. Philip Martin. Next speaker signed up is Philip Martin. Michael Gruber. Michael Gruber. Okay. Julian Rosavi. Julian, are you with us today? We had you in our chat list, so you should be receiving a request to unmute, Julian. You're still with us. Jason Wallace. Jason Wallace. Okay. Dan Manios. Dan Manios?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for all this clarification. It's been incredibly helpful. I have just a brief comment that I think that the preservation of the neighborhood character is a important aspect of this plan for these areas, as well as the ability to introduce new types of housing in the duplexes and triplexes. My general concern is that often it's not the duplexes and triplexes that are changing the character of the neighborhood and really introducing types of housing or elevations that are inconsistent with what's currently there. It's really the single family houses that are, you're tearing down the ranch house and building a much larger home for an additional single family home, at least what we've seen so far. And there doesn't seem to be any of the same restrictions or limitations or anything of that nature applied to the single family homes as there is to the multi-unit housing that would prevent the single family homes from disrupting the neighborhood character. Is that a misunderstanding on my part, or is that a aspect of the plan that I just am not comfortable with?
Thank you, Mr. Manus. So again, I'll just reiterate that in these sessions, we will take down your comment, and if it's point of clarification, it will be put into our portal for a response. So thank you for that. It's definitely being transcribed and putting into the portal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Christopher Cato. Christopher Cato. Okay. Our next speaker is Megan Good. Megan, are you with us today?
Hello, yes, I am.
Hi, Megan.
Well, hello. Thanks for hosting this. Thanks to all the staff that I know are working on this project. I have a question, so I don't know if you'll be able to answer it or not in this forum, but it's really about the edges and the translation between the residential districts and the more higher density uses. As I reviewed the policy map, I noticed a lot of areas, particularly like north of Center City, where we have pretty dense uses like community, I can't remember what it's called now, like the community area and the community activity area and the regional activity area that were right up against neighborhood 1 zoning. In some cases, like sharing a property boundary in backyards. I know that's the case in my own neighborhood and several other neighborhoods. I saw in parts of NODA that you had neighborhood activity centers where it's right up against neighborhood 1. But then in a lot of other areas, we have community activity centers right up against neighborhood 1. And I haven't seen any information yet on what that transition will be like for those properties right there. Is that something you can answer?
So these forums are really for listening. However, what I will say is that the questions that you pose to us, whether they be for UDO or policy mapping, we will get them to the right place for response. So I know that you mentioned policy mapping in some of your questioning, so we'll be sure as we enter those, we can get those to the right places for response to you. Thank you, Megan, for that. Definitely, we have someone scribing for that. Our next speaker, and this is actually our last registered speaker, and then we will move on to our queue, Jacob Untereiner. I'm sorry if I totally messed up your last name, Jacob. Are you with us? Untereiner. Should be receiving a request for unmuting if you're still here with us, Jacob. Looks like I see you in our participant list. Jacob, if you're having any kind of difficulty receiving that request, if you don't mind putting that in the chat, and we can definitely see what our issue is. But Jacob. Okay. So we'll move forward. Jacob, if you, again, if you were having difficulty, if you'll put something in the chat, we can see what we can figure out what is going on with the mute function. Okay, and our next speaker, and this is moving on to our queue, is Kimberly Nelson. Kimberly.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for the work that you're doing. I have 1.7 acres of land in the West Corridor, and I happened to, I traveled to Dubai in October of last year, and I saw some architectural features that I was interested in. And I was wondering if some of these desired aesthetics, can be implemented with our lot. As far as in terms of creativity and innovation, there's green premise growing popularity across the globe with shipping containers. They're being recycled, and it literally can be utilized for schools, dormitories, studios. We're looking at a mixed use opportunity, and the conversion of these shipping containers to living spaces is not a new concept. I was wondering if this could be something, I don't even know if it's been introduced to UDO or not, but it's also environmental, sustainable. Shipping containers have become a more common architectural tool over the past few years. And so I was wondering if we could have some insertions of external elements and coatings and use of equipment. And if it's a possibility to have the container adopted according to its future use and desired aesthetics. That's pretty much what I have.
Thank you, Kimberly, for your thoughts. It looks like all of the speakers that we had prior to, what I just want to do just to be sure we did not miss anyone. I'm just going to go back through that list of registered speakers really quickly to be sure no one has come to the meeting and we missed them in our first round. Daryl Greenberg. John Friday. Philip Martin. Michael Gruber. Jason Wallace. and Christopher Cato. Okay. And Jacob, I believe I saw in the chat that you were having issue with audio and video. So if you would like, can share the dial-in phone number. We definitely want to hear your thoughts. Share the dial-in phone number for you to dial into the meeting if that might be a little simpler. Send a direct message if you'd like to do that. And then we're just going to open the chat again for anyone else who'd like to share or speak. We don't want to close the forum before everyone has had a. Okay, thank you, Eric. I see that you have posted some questions in the chat that we will definitely add to the queue. And just keeping in mind, I do want to share that with the group. If you'd like to post any comments in the chat, we will transcribe those as well to add to the portal. So if you don't feel comfortable speaking, I totally understand. You can just add your information into the chat and we will be sure to transcribe that and enter it just as if we would if you were speaking aloud. And then again, I just want to share with those people who ask specific questions that we will enter these into our comment portal for response over the next several weeks. So if it's points of clarification, you can expect a response through that portal. And if what you enter into the portal is a request for change, we just don't want to give you the unrealistic expectation that those will be responded to prior to that second draft, because that is what that period of reviewing those to consider for the second draft is for. Okay. So looks like we have come to the end of our open forum. If you think of something and you'd like to register for this afternoon's meeting, please feel free to do so. Just quickly, we have a couple of wrap-up slides. So as we spoke about, our public comment portal is open, and it is open until March 18th. That is a very important day, because if you'd like to get those comments in, we'll need those again by March 18th. In order to be able to consider those for our second draft. You do submit your comments by topic. It's actually, we do have a video on our website that kind of talks you through how to submit comments. So if it gets a little bit confusing and you're like, how do I talk about a specific thing? I would definitely suggest that you watch that short tutorial on how you can submit comments. General comments are very much welcome, but comments tied specifically to the UDO articles and sections are really encouraged. The more specific you can make it, the easier it is for staff to be able to review it and know where it needs to go. So for sure, if you just have general overview comments, please feel free to add those. But we do request specific UDO articles and section topics or comments. There are a few resources that you can use on our website as well to help you get better understanding of the UDO and how it affects you in different areas. So please use our helpful resources on our website. Thank you, Jacob, for adding that to the chat. Thank you so much. Please utilize those resources as well. And then just to highlight, we do have an additional listening session scheduled for next Thursday. So again, our Thursdays with the UDO. It will happen the exact same way that these have happened today, which will be 12 noon to 1 p.m. And then again from 6 to 7 p.m. via Zoom. You can register on our website. The specific topic for next Thursday is parking. So if you feel so inclined, we'd love to have you back. We'd love to hear from you, get your thoughts and feedback on the standards set forth in parking. Again, we just want to, I do want to point out that the sessions that have previously happened. So as we take a look back, heritage tree protection, short-term rentals, and then also today's session will be on our website or are currently there for playback. So you can look at the chat history, you can look at the actual presentation along with those things that were stated by participants during those sessions. They are available for playback. And again, you'll see the meeting recordings, the slides, and the transcripts on our website as well. So we definitely encourage you to remain engaged with us. We are super grateful for the feedback. We continue to ask for it as you think of things. Please don't hesitate to put those in the comment portal. Again, it is open until March 18th. And we will stick around just in case anyone else has any other thoughts that they'd like to share. But again, thank you for participating in our listening session today. Thank you, Mariah. I'll just point out she did put in the direct link to the comment portal for those who would like to submit their comments online. It is in the chat.